So we have very, very interesting news to share in today's episode, which is really about the fact that President Donald Trump is now essentially trying to propose the idea of ending the jobs report, which means that we're going to potentially see the very, very final and last jobs report being made public. Now, I think it's really important to specify is that right now this is really just a thought that they're proposing around, so it's not official. They are not officially ending the jobs report, but there's a lot of thoughts that they want to do that. The motivation behind this is that because, as most of you guys know if you've been following this channel for a while, is that the recent jobs report that came out for the month of July, it was released, and the long story short is that it was very, very bad. It was just very, very underwhelming. And the worst part is that they actually ended up revising the numbers before that. So for the previous 2 months in May and June, and it was even worse. So the idea really is that in today's episode, what I really want to talk about is the background story to what's going on right now when it comes to unemployment or jobs report or labor market. I want to talk a little bit about why this is happening and why they're going to try to end the jobs report, because it's not just that they're going to end the jobs report potentially, but it's that they're also going to potentially change up the methodology and how they calculate the jobs report. Because if you've been following this channel for a while now, you probably know about how these jobs numbers and the reports and everything, it's a little bit skewed and it's not fully a full reflection of what is actually going on inside of our country and our economy. Of course, if it sounds a little bit confusing, it's hopefully going to make a lot more sense by the end of this episode. So with that being said, let's just get right to this. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. If you guys want to share support, you guys can decide, but it is greatly appreciated, and we will be making other videos as well on this channel about this topic. So with that said, let's get started. So the background story to understand how we physically got here and why they're currently doing this and the motivation to end the jobs report really begins with the fact that President Donald Trump recently elected a brand new BLS commissioner who, if you're not familiar with it, the BLS, which basically stands for Bureau of Labor Statistics, is essentially a organization in our country that reports everything related to the numbers of our unemployment system, our labor market, what it is, in different sectors and industries. So for example, what it is in engineering, what it is in tech, what it is in healthcare, what it is in hospitality. They're basically the people that calculate all of the numbers and really put everything together. Well, the story is that they recently elected a brand new BLS commissioner who goes by the name of E.J. Antony. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. But the idea really behind this is that essentially E.J. Antony, he is proposing the idea to Donald Trump of ending the jobs report, and the response and the reasoning to this is certainly what they're trying to do is to make it so it's not that they're not going to calculate the job numbers anymore, because again, this is very important data, so they obviously need to. But what it is that they're essentially going to end making it public. So instead, now what's going to happen is that it's going to become private information. Additionally, on top of that, the second thing that he's also proposing is that he wants to change the methodology to how they even calculate these numbers to begin with. And I mean, this is something that's, already very, very well known if you've been following this channel, which is really about the fact that it's very, very clear that a lot of the numbers that we see inside of our country are a little bit misleading. On paper, for example, currently we see an unemployment rate of something floating around between 4 to 5%. But when it comes to real life, I can certainly say, at least this is from my experience, and feel free to comment your experience as well, because I would love to hear from your thoughts as well. But in real life, there's a lot more than just 4 to 5% of the people in our country out of work, or certainly in danger of losing work, and certainly, most certainly, people that might be employed, but they're working relatively lower paying jobs. So in other words, they're employed, but they're sort of underemployed. They're not living to their full potential. They're working jobs, which is really great to be employed, but they're either being underpaid or they're working jobs that are below what they actually physically studied. So for example, you hear stories all the time, especially today in our economy, about people that might have graduated with a bachelor's or even a master's degree, but they're working low-wage jobs in hospitality or in retail or anything along in that world. So the idea really behind this is that a lot of this stuff is going to be industry specific. It depends on the industry you work in. I know, for example, tech is known to be struggling. We've talked about that on this channel. And there's other industries that might actually be doing a little bit better. So for example, such as like healthcare, I heard is doing a lot better. But at the very, very end of the day, the idea is that collectively as a country, we are underperforming. Our numbers were not very, very good in the recent jobs report. And so what's going on is that in order to inflate it and make it look better or not as bad as it really is, they're going to be potentially changing the methodology or even potentially just ending the report, at least making the report public altogether. So it's simply becomes private information for the feds, for Trump, and for the people in our administration to make economic decisions instead. And that's really the story and background story to how we got to where we are currently right now. Now, I briefly want to just touch up a little bit about how the jobs report came out because I know we didn't go into full details about that. But the idea is that the recent jobs report did come out right here. And the idea really is to get a strong picture about how bad they really, really were. Is that we recently found out that the jobs report is that for the last month of July, so it came out in August this month, but in reference to July, only about 73,000 jobs were added last month, which is a massive downfall from the original 200,000 or so that we were seeing much of last year, so average wise. Additionally, what makes things even worse is the fact that a lot of these numbers were adjusted for the month of May and June. I believe that they revised these numbers, so in the month of May they found out that instead of the original reported 100,000 or so jobs that were originally reported, they were only able to add 19,000 jobs in May, and they were only able to add 14,000 jobs in June. And the prediction behind this one is that because of what's going on right now, it is expected to give perspective is that if you think that 73,000 jobs, adding only 73,000 jobs for last month is bad, the worst part is that it's expected that for the next month, so for example in September, they're going to potentially revise these numbers, so it's actually going to become even worse than 73,000, because it's very, very rare when they revise these numbers that they end up finding out that they added actually more jobs. In most cases, when the numbers get revised, they actually become worse than what we already are currently seeing. So that's really the story and situation to what's going on right now. Now, I want to maybe just now transition and talk a little bit about the predictions to where we actually go from here when it comes to the fact that we now already have discussed about how rough these numbers have been. And again, feel free to share your comments down below because I would love to hear your thoughts, or if you just wanted to say hi, it's always greatly appreciated and always great to hear from you guys. But the idea is that the prediction right now is that because of the rough jobs report that came out, what is expected to happen is that first off is that when it gets revised, we are going through a downward trend right now. So the first prediction is that it's actually expected to get even worse, at least certainly in the very, very near future. The second big prediction that's happening right now is going to be an impact of result of what's going on, which is really about the fact that they're also going to potentially now have even more motivation and reason to cut interest rates. And that's the part that's really, really important to really understand, is that because right now, as we know, is that the goal has been to cut interest rates, but the reason why it's been so slow to do so is because the economy has just been very, very unstable and uncertain right now. So what's going to potentially happen is that because if they really, really true end up finding out or really, really feel that they're pressured to cut interest rates, this is going to potentially lead to a better stock market, because again, typically the stock market increases when the interest rates get cut, and the reverse is true. You know, when the interest rates rise, like what happened in 2022 and 23, then the stock market falls. So the stock market is expected to go up, which is the really good news. However, so again, maybe some good news in light of everything going on. However, it does mean that inflation is going to worsen and things are going to get even more expensive, and it's going to lead to an even rougher economy in general. The job market, it's very uncertain whether it's going to improve or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts about where you think it's going to go. But the idea is that one thing for certain is that there's going to be a lot of action that has to be taken. There's going to be a lot of evaluation that has to happen. And they're really going to have to make a lot of decisions to see what they end up ultimately doing from here. Do they end up cutting interest rates? Do they actually end up cutting interest rates given what's happening? Because there's a lot of pressure to do so obviously now. And I know certainly Donald Trump wants to cut interest interest rates, what's going to happen to the labor market. There's a lot of uncertainty there. We don't know the full story, but of course, this is just something we have to see in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really wanted to cover in today's video. So if you guys hopefully enjoyed that, as always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell if you guys haven't done so already, and hope to see you guys next time. Oh, and by the way, best of luck with everyone in the job hunt, because I know there's a lot of people that are hunting for jobs right now. So just best wishes there, because it's going to be a wild ride, but hopefully just sending the best wishes that we're able to get through this all. So with that said, thank you guys for watching.